I'm doing a little bit of gardening, but I wanted to take a minute and welcome you to the next episode of the Heal the Healer Mami Goddaughter Edition. In this episode, we go over all the fascinating challenges that come with the evolution of us as spiritual beings on our spiritual journey. And we also talk about raising children in traditions and the effects when you don't. So sit back, get your lemongrass tea and your yoga mat, and tune in for another wonderful session of Heal the Healer Mami Goddaughter Edition.
But I'm excited to talk about what the healing path looks like and how you know that you have gotten to a healthy just baseline. I've been actively working on my healing for some years now. And now that I've gotten a lot farther on the path, I can really appreciate all of my experiences. And I look at everything I've been through a little bit differently, even things that I've reflected on in the past. Now that I'm at this new stage, I see another layer. And that's been really beautiful to realize that it's less of a linear path and more of a spiral. It also helps me with the things that I am working on now to have more patience and grace with myself and with others. So yes, and I'm excited to get into this topic. Alafia, alafia, alafia.
Hi. I couldn't find the mic button. I'm sorry. I'm usually on my laptop, but this time I'm on my phone because I just had to make it happen with what I had going on today. My name's Tanisha. My family originates from Barbados and also New Orleans. So uh, for as far back as I can think, we've been involved in the hoodoo practice. I've taught it to my kids, and I just feel like I don't know. I feel like this group called me, and I was on the video several weeks ago, but I've been feeling like I was stagnant within my hoodoo practice, and like I'm sort of I don't want to say outgrown because I know there's always something more to be learned, but I feel like working within this community, it's giving me more direction, discernment. Uh, it's actually allowing me to how do I want to say this? Be able to teach my teachings and what I know and my knowledge to my seeds. Instead of when they ask me questions, I'm like stuck. Like I don't want to give them the wrong answer. I don't want to give them the right answer. I don't know what path they're going because all my children are grown right now. But yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the community. I'm grateful for the midnight responses when I'm up and I can't sleep and I don't know what to do or so forth and so on. I think it's allowing me more to walk in my purpose with the grace I've been given instead of allowing other things to interfere. I don't know if any of you guys were in the chat a few weeks ago. I was having issues with my emotions. Just they were all over the place, not knowing how I was properly responding and I just knew that it was a little off. But with that being said, I feel like I'm growing more. So I'm appreciative. I don't know what's going on with my video, but I'm appreciative very much for all of you ladies, and I just look forward to it. I love the community because now I don't feel so out of place, so left off because everybody in my family that was heavy in the hoodoo practice, they're all deceased now. So I know that that gives me, my ancestors on the other side, it gives me help on the in the spirit side. But as far as here in this world, I think I was sort of feeling, I guess the right word would say lost. But I am grateful for all of you ladies, and I look forward to anything that you guys can help me with, teach me, help me break generational curses, pass on the knowledge, grow in the practice. So I'm just grateful. And I think all of you, actually, if anybody else is on here that I just don't see, I thank everybody, and I'm grateful.
Thank you, Tanisha. It is so good to have you. One, let me, um, recognize and acknowledge. I'm very happy to hear that you're passing these practices on to the next generation, even if you don't know, you don't know what their path is, or how they're absorbing the information. You're making sure that this practice still stays alive within your family, within your bloodline. That is a very special position, sometimes a very lonely position. But I commend you for your courage and your aptitude to keep going, and keep those traditions alive, because that's what we're wanting to do. That's why I started this journey, is because I wanted to pass down to my future generations something that was ours, something that was within our bloodline. I started looking for what was in my bloodline, and not for me to gain all this power and do all these miraculous things. I really wanted to gain as much as I can gain to pass it down. So I commend you for your efforts in that. And yes, that definitely. And what you mentioned in your intro is a little bit of what happens, like what I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned that you were stagnant, or you felt stagnant, right? And in that stagnation, sometimes what I've realized in my own journey is that there is growth that needs to happen, and in that there's like healing that needs to happen. As Mama Sharon mentioned, we sometimes come full circle, right, on some of our experiences and our growth. And for me to move forward, sometimes I had to sit down and recognize what it is that I need to work on. And when I looked at the things that I needed to work on, behind that was trauma. Behind that was things that I didn't want to face. Behind that was parts of me that I needed to heal. So, my question to the group is, when you feel like you are stagnant and you need to heal, what are some of the indicators in your life that happen that make you say, okay, I need to sit down, I need to reflect, and I need to heal to get to the next level? Right? The floor is open.
Okay, I didn't want to be greedy, but um, for me personally, I believe that my main sign had to have been when I would pour my libations out correctly, as I know I should, and I seen zero response. It was allowing me to know that somewhere in there I had an unseen hurdle. And then I would go precisely over what my libations were, what my declaration was, and see if anywhere in there it was things from the past, or things I was currently dealing with, or things that I swept under the rug and figured if I out of sight, out of mind. But that doesn't work in these practices at all. Zero. There's no out of sight, out of mind, because it's always there. But I'd have to say it is definitely me seeing things move prior to my stagnant, and then when I would try to pour things into the atmosphere, it was like nothing was happening, like I've done absolutely nothing, or I was a baby in the community and didn't know what I was doing. But it was simply, and like you said, a lot of it came from past trauma, that I felt, okay, well, I survived this far and I've come this far, so what's the reason to go back and have to deal with something I've buried? But just because you bury it doesn't mean that it lays dormant. It doesn't mean that it's dead, because I've seen things that I've buried pop up in my children, pop up in my children's children, and I'm like, we're gonna cut this right here, right now. I have a year and a half old granddaughter, and it's crazy because I was seeing some things within her, and I'm like, this is crazy. She's a year and a half old. She shouldn't be experiencing or going through certain, I say unseen because I say unseen to the naked eye, But then, I went before my ancestors and I called out and I cried out and started getting prompt responses that these are things that I have to deal with to stop them from rubbing on her. So I would definitely have to say where I noticed my stagnancy is when things weren't moving that I knew would normally move. Yeah.
Go. I believe, can you restate the question one more time? It was how we know that we are stagnant on our healing journey?
Yes, how, like sometimes stagnation happens, but what indicators in your life happen when you know you need to heal to get to that next level?
Um, For me, a lot of them are physical responses or changes in like my routines. So when I find it very hard for me to go to sleep, I find myself night after night staying up late. That's one indication. My eating habits, where either one or two things will happen. Either I'll be overeating or I'll be under eating. Um, and then also my my aversion to spending time with myself. I typically love to journal. I love to read or just take slow walks and things like that. But when I realize that it's been a long time since I picked up my journal, or I'm, throwing myself into work, always on the computer, or if I notice I've been scrolling like on social media a lot, that's when I know that I've like really started to edge out, and I'm like trying to distract myself from something that's deeper that's going on. That's typically when those are the indicators that there's something deeper going on. And then also I've noticed certain times of the year, like there are just certain dates that are pretty significant to me around the times my parents' birthday and transitions, which uh, luckily for me, well, I don't know if luckily is the right word, but shout out to them. They're around the same time. So I just have like two periods of time during the year, in June and then in January, where I tend to notice that I start to have those kinds of feelings. And I also, around those times, try to put more effort into um, doing my different rituals and habits that I know help bring myself into balance. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. For me, what I notice is like a lot of emotions. My emotions are unstable during that time. So, what happens for me is that I'll have like a lot of intrusive thoughts, negative thoughts or negative reactions to the things in my environment. And, it's sometimes more like, um, yeah, like anger or annoyance or frustrations. I have a lot of frustrations, and sometimes it will feel like external obstacles, but really it's just my reaction to things. And so sometimes I have to sit back and think like, why am I having these thoughts? Why am I having like this resistance to my environment or to the things that are going on along my journey? And so that's one way that I know that there's some healing that has to happen to push me over that hump, to push me over to the next level. And when that happens, it's like, well, let me go back because there's another sign for me, and it's like reoccurring dreams. I went through, I went through a period in my life, and I'm talking years, more than 5 years. Every time I closed my eyes and went to sleep, I had the same dream. it will drive you crazy. It was like I was in the same place doing different things. I had built a whole city that I would go to in my dream, like the same place, but different things happening. And I remember I would like have dreams about flying, and I would fly somewhere, like in a plane, and I'd fly somewhere and land in the same place. And it's like I lived there. And I knew that there was a lot of trauma that I was dealing with, a lot of the refinement that I needed in order to move to the next level. And what it really was is that I wasn't on my path. I wasn't on the path that I was supposed to be on spiritually and or in life. And so when that happened, when I finally got on path, I started to make the efforts that I needed to make, the sacrifices that I needed to have, the discipline that I needed. I just started to go head on into the issues that I had. My dreams began to change. I moved to like a different city, still a city, but I at least moved to a different city. And then as I started to walk fully in my gifts, fully on my path, now my mind is open, my spirit is open, and I no longer have those reoccurring dreams. Every time I close my eyes, it's a different dream, a different message. Like the divinities or ancestors are able to speak to me however they want, not through this construct of a city that I have created. And so I know that there was healing that I had to do, and I had to like face a lot of things head on. And so that's another indicator for me. Um, yeah, I'll open the floor. I was thinking about something else, but it'll come back to me. I feel. Oh, and if you just joined, we're just talking about what are the indicators in your life or in your environment that uh, that alert you to the fact that there's more healing that you need to do. The floor is open. Okay, well, I guess we can move on to the next thing. Now that we started to um, point out what are the indicators in our environment that cause us to be aware that we need to heal, what are some of the activities, what are some of the things that you do to start that healing process?
Hey, good morning. I'll jump in. I actually put mine in the chat earlier. I wasn't able to talk, but could I go back to that real quick?
Of course.
Okay. Um, so recently I started having these dreams, which I haven't had the dreams in a very long time, which shows me that subconsciously there's a lot going on in my mind. And also I exploded, like I just really exploded last week, which I've never done that before, with like built up emotions. I felt like a lot of anger towards certain things. And that's when I realized something has to be going on. So now I just try to meditate more. Like right now I'm outside with the trees and listening to the birds chirp and things like that. Just really relaxing and calming. I try to connect more to my ancestors, like light candles and reflect and and do more prayers for them. So yeah, that's what I do.
Thank you, Taiba. Yeah, being in nature is, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I said you're welcome and thank you.
Oh, yeah. Being in nature is a big way of grounding yourself and meditating, kind of releasing some of that negativity or some of the confusion, let's say. So thank you for that. Any other ways that we begin the healing process?
I'll go. For me, it starts with like, once I realize that I need to kind of recenter and reground, I do an observation of what I'm currently doing, the ways that I'm distracting myself, and then what I'm getting out of it. Because I hold the belief that like everything that we're doing is to try to make ourselves feel better. And so even in these maladaptive practices that are happening, there's something that's like feeding a part of me. Mianu always says that existence is full, right? And so whenever we have any type of voids, we try to fill it with things. So I first take a look at like what I'm filling my voids with, and what I'm trying to get out of it, and then start to address those different needs that I have. And a lot of times, one of the things that I say a lot, especially to my close friends, is like, it's not even that I'm looking for someone to come save me. It's like, I just need to have someone, or I like to have someone there to remind me that I can do it. So a lot of my healing comes from me acknowledging the pain that I'm currently going through, and then reminding myself of all of the times that I've gotten through it. And really just, instead of rushing to try to fix it right away, just like being in that feeling, acknowledging it, um, like admitting the validity of it. Um, and then I can move into the wider picture of understanding, like, well, it wasn't possible for this person to be there because XYZ. Before I would immediately go to big picture and be like, oh, well, it's okay because blah, 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 blah. But it's like, no, my feelings are valid. I'm feeling hurt. I'm going to address that and then also move forward. So a lot of my healing starts with just addressing what I'm feeling and then moving from there. Alafia, alafia, alafia.
Okay. I apologize. Can you repeat the question she was just responding on?
Yes, yes. How, once you recognize that healing is needed, what are the ways that you start to begin to face those things and heal yourself?
Okay. Ooh, that's a good one. Uh Me personally, I would have to say I resort back to shadow work to see if I've missed something, if I've jumped over something. And a lot of times I find myself resorting back to my basic literature, and I'll reread certain parts that I know caught my attention before. And usually that's the times that I see something I didn't see before. You know how you watch a movie multiple times and every time you see it, you see something you didn't see the last time? That would have to be my go-to. Lots of grounding. I do increase my meditations. I do increase my groundings just in case it is outside distraction that I'm not aware of. I try to bring it. I, I want to rephrase that. I try to expose it and get my discernment correctly, like she had said earlier, so that I know exactly what I'm trying to identify, conquer, smooth through, deal with, and so forth and so on. Alafia, alafia, alafia.
I go. Yeah, for me as well, I do like to be in nature, like feet in the ground. I really think that that helps me neutralize my energy, any negativity, any confusion. It helps me neutralize my energy. Also, I go back into like my routines. Sometimes life pulls you one way or the other, and you don't necessarily do all the purifications that you need to do. The morning, meditations, the ancestral veneration that needs to happen. So I usually, if I notice a spin out of my emotions, I go back into my routines pretty heavily. So purification, spiritual baths. I go into meditation. I'm more of a person that's like, I don't know, society says it's not good, but I still think it's so, for me, it's okay. Like I need solitude. I need I need to cut out all the noise. I don't like to have a lot of external influence, right? I want to like clear my mind. I want to clear the voices. I want to hear ancestors for myself, and start to walk through the process. And like once I identify, okay, I'm spending time at my altar, I'm grounding myself, I'm purifying myself, then I can be like more open to having like support and guidance through the process of healing. But those are like the first things that I do. I kind of go back into my routine heavy, my discipline heavy, and that's how I'm able to see what the trauma is, right? Because you kind of walk yourself back as well. You're like, okay, I feel this, but why do I feel this? And why is that? And then why is that? And then as you walk yourself backwards, you kind of get to the root and figure out what it is that you need to adjust. Um, and so that's what I do. I feel. Yes, Taiba. It's Biano always teaches like you have to get to the root, the source of everything. And the question that you have to ask yourself is why. Continue to ask why until you hit that root. And even like in your practices, like continue to ask why to get to the source, to go deeper into your practices. So that's really important for all of us on our spiritual journey, because we will not ever know everything. We won't always, there's not going to be a point where you're going to sit down and be like, I got this, I know everything, because then that means you're not grown. So we always have to focus on continuously learning, continuously growing, continuously healing. There's always a deeper level we're human. So there's always a deeper level of healing that you need, or refinement that you need to yourself. Okay. Okay. So um, my question would be for the larger community of African American women or African women in the diaspora. What are the things that we, as women, think that we need, as Black women, need to heal in our communities? Like, what are the topics, the triggers, the things that hold us back? What are some of the things you think we need to heal as a community of Black women? Floor is open.
Um, let's see. What are the things I think that within the, like you said, the larger community, as far as Black women in general, I feel like we need to stop normalizing outside validation. Focus more on the generational curses as far as the relationships within with us and our daughters, granddaughters, within that nature. It seems like a lot of times nowadays they get distracted with competing against your fellow sister instead of embracing or blessing or teaching. It seems more like a competition. So I would definitely say the outside validation, generational curses, and I specify that within the relationships with the mothers and the daughters because it's not like what it was at one point in time where we were pouring into our seeds and pouring into our fellow sisters, and now it's like I know something but I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to get at a higher level than myself. So yeah, Alafia.
That's a good one. Where do you think that comes from? That need for outside validation, or even that competitive nature. Where do you think that comes from?
I would have to say society's influences. I would definitely have to say society's influences and the need for society to control our narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that because, like, I think it all comes back to trauma. Because if you ask yourself, like, why is it that we uh, feel the need for outside validation? Um, it's like a self-worth thing, right? Like it's society, it's the past history. It make us feel unworthy. There's like a sense, yeah, a sense of unworthiness. And you need somebody to say, oh, you're pretty, oh, you're smart, oh, you're the best at this, in order to build that self-worth. And a lot of that is just stripped away, even just in general, how they depict, African American women or Black women in general, in the media, how they depict in history. We don't see we see some, but not a lot of examples, that really show who we are as people, who we are, how important we are into our communities. And so I think that comes from a level of self-worth that we have to look to rebuild. And I think a lot of us are doing that when we're going back to our traditions, when we're learning about who we are and where we come from, when we pass down our practices, we're saying that we have something that's valuable. We are, that we don't have to look towards outside validation. It's something that comes from within. That's something that's already in our bloodline. So that's a heavy topic. It's an important topic about self-worth. But I think for me, I would say that's something that I can see that's needed to be developed in our community or redeveloped. We have worked. I'm not feeling.
I go. One of the things that comes to mind, that we need healing for Black women, for our community, would be like prioritizing our relationship with one another. I think that we have so much on our plate. Sometimes our relationship with our sisters can get pushed back, and because we're busy and we all understand that, but like we need to realize how much we need each other, how much like energy and fuel we can get when we're able to come together, and also the support that we can get. I think working together more, we need to work on building our trust, like being able to have sisters who can help watch your kids, or being able to swap skill sets and barter and things like that can help take some of the stress that we experience off. So just really prioritizing finding strong, solid relationships can help with a lot of the things that the stress that we feel when we feel like we have to do it all ourselves. Here in Benin, like the women at the temple, they all work together and help fill in the gaps. And so nothing takes that long to do because there's 3 or 4 of us, sorting the beans or carrying something heavy or, cleaning this one area while other people are doing this thing. And so when we realize that when we bring all of the work together and then distribute it out, everything gets done so much quicker. And so I think finding those bonds and then really prioritizing keeping them going is something that could greatly, greatly help our community. Alafia, alafia, alafia.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that because the society that we live in is so individualized, and it's praised. Like if you are one person doing so many things, you are like superwoman. You're great, and that's another like outside validation of you saying they're saying, okay, now you have worth. But in our communities, traditionally, like you mentioned, it's many women coming together to do great things, right? And sometimes impossible things. If you think about all that it takes to run a family, run a village, run a temple, it's like you can't have one woman doing all things. It won't get done. You do need to swap out time, uh, value set. Like you have to figure out how to work together. And that's not really a value that's within today's society. And so we have to work on that. Um, it also reminds me of polygamy, right? Like that's like a word that we don't use so much. But in tradition, that's why that's one of the reasons why polygamy works. It's because there's one woman to watch the kids, there's one woman to make money and go to the market, there's one woman to clean, there's one woman to take care of the husband. And it's like a rotation of such to where everyone can get their goals met and the family can grow together. So little ones, the little one here with me, but um, but that's builds strength within the community and it's something that we don't talk about too much. There's a podcast episode, no, actually it's a series on the Divine Feminine podcast talking about sisterhood. And that's one of the main things that we talk about is how we need to bring back the value set of communing with our sisterhood to build strength in our community. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. Anybody else? What are the things we need to heal in our community as Black women?
I'll go. Something that came to mind was our relationship with our sons. Um, because in our community, there's our relationship with, I guess, men in general or the masculine, because I feel like we place different relationships or expectations in the wrong places. And so that just throws out the equilibrium everywhere. It's hard. And well, so I'm 31. I'm 31. And so I am looking for me a husband, and it's difficult to find a man who loves to provide, who has all of the very practical skill sets while also having emotional maturity. It goes beyond just being able to pay for things, but there's also like emotional protection that needs to happen and things like that. And so I think it has to do with the way that a lot of the men were raised. A lot of because of all the political things that happen, the father not being in the home. And so then a lot of moms then treating their sons in ways that they would normally treat their partners. And so then that has skewed the way that these men think and see the world. And then that also influences the relationship that the mother-in-law has with the daughter-in-law. And so everything is just kind of out of balance and skewed. And so I think the way that we have relationships with men is something that greatly needs to be healed. Yeah, Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Just to go off of what Mama Strong said, um, I think that was an amazing answer for that. And maybe that was spirit throwing that last thought up there to make it a good topic, because I get what you're saying. It's almost like when the father's absent, we then give the son the role of man of the house. And within that role that we give them to fill, like she was saying earlier, to fill the void, somewhere in the plane of raising them then turns into depending on them. And like you said, that could be a lot on a young male. So when they do get to the adult as the man that they are supposed to be and are expected from society or the community to be, they either fall short or overstep the throw when it comes down to it. So that was a very, very good point made. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia. Very good point.
I'll go. Okay. Just because I love to do this. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Do you guys know what devil's advocate is? It's like it's like you voice an opposite opinion of of the group to see how perspectives can be widened, not to cause trouble. But you mentioned that we treat the boy as the man of the house, and when the father is not there. And my question is, why not? Why not treat him like the man of the house, grooming and teaching him how to be man of his own house, giving him that experience, right? From what I've seen a lot is that we want to avoid treating our sons like that. And so we treat our sons like our daughters. We give them a lot of grace. We give them a lot of comfort. We give them a lot of pampering. I'm guilty. I have a son too. I'm guilty of it too. I just want to love on them. But I saw a meme on Instagram, and it was saying that statistics show that boys that grow up with a harder life, or boys that grow up with a harder life, having more obstacles or more put like responsibilities or obstacles on them, they grow up to be problem solvers. They grow up to be providers. They grow up to be stronger men than those boys that are given too much, not able to learn the lessons that they learned. So what would you say to that? Like, do you think that there's a balance? Do you not totally not agree? That's just for the group. Totally not agree with them being treated as a man of the house. Like that concept of boys that live a harder life come up to be stronger men.
Alafia. I think you have to, I guess, figure out that healthy balance. But we also have to look at the dynamics of how the mother was raised. Because if you don't know how to do that, then you're gonna pass down those generational traumas. So if you didn't have your father, your mother, how whatever relationship she had with men is being passed down, and then you have your son, and you don't know how to navigate that the masculine energy, then it's continued to be that those traumas, like I said, passed down. Um, and then it's kind of like I'll use me for instance. I have three girls. My oldest daughter was my mother calls her my golden child. um, and then it's like some of the things that I was doing in her early childhood years that I changed with the other two that I wasn't doing with the other two. So it's kind of like I got a second and a third chance to kind of, for lack of better words, to get it right. Not saying that she's out there or nothing's wrong, but just the things that I notice, okay, maybe I should try this differently with the other two. But back to the question, I feel like if the mother doesn't have the tools, then it's the traumas are just going to be continued to be passed down. And each child is different. Some children take young boys might take that responsibility or and thrive in it, and then others get that responsibility put on them, and it's become a trauma to them, a traumatic experience. Oh, I had to do this. I was the man of the house, and I wasn't ready, or whatever ends up coming out of that. So I think it's just finding a healthy balance.
I go. Um, I think that I think that age appropriate responsibility should be given. Um, and it really should not have anything to do with uh whether or not you are trying to make him the man of the house if his father is there or if he isn't. Age appropriate responsibility needs to be given. Um, I think that it's important to allow them to have a childhood because we already know this now as adults. I'm quite sure I'm not the only one that heard when I was a kid to enjoy my childhood because once I'm an adult, I'll be an adult forever. And so I think that for a young boy to hear that is kind of taking away his opportunity to just be a boy for circumstances that are completely out of his control. He should not have to pay that price. But whether his dad is around or not, there are still certain things that should be expected of him because as the adults in his life, as his parents, um, we are aware of what he is getting ready to go into. I've also noticed um, I have two brothers. They're younger than me, so I'm the oldest. And with my friends growing up, all of my friends that have brothers, somewhere along the line, we ended up noticing that our mothers raised us, but babied our brothers. And I think that it has everything to do with the fact that as a mother, you know what the world is going to be expecting of your daughter once she becomes a woman, and your focus is on trying to prepare her for that. But when it comes to your son, you love him, you want to do things for him, and all this other stuff. And I think that's why it's so important if possible for kids to have both because I've noticed that fathers baby their daughters and they raise their sons. They're not as easy on their sons. I mean, they're not as easy on their sons as they are on their daughters. And you can get away with a lot more with your dad as a girl than you can get away with your mom and vice versa. that little boy knows he can run to mommy and get all this comfort and protection, but dad is not gonna play that. If he fall and hit his head, he'll be like, that boy all right, he'll get up. Um, and because he knows that, okay, this is his father, he's trying to emulate him or live up to some expectation, he'll find some kind of way to man up in his own way and like deal with it and move on. But when I look at my mom and with my brothers who are, fathers and husbands now, I have seen the ways, and I was just talking to my youngest brother a few days ago, and he was talking about how in a lot of ways he feel like he has struggled with manhood and being a father and the head of a household because my mom did so much for my brothers. Um, like it was okay for me to get a job when I was a teenager, but with my brothers, even when they were in college, no, he doesn't need to work. I'm like, Ma, it's okay if he works. He just needs to focus on school. But nobody was saying that about me. That I just need to focus on school. It was just understood and expected that I would find a way to balance working part-time and then also going to school, and Lenitra will figure it out. Um, and so I've seen with both of my brothers certain ways that they struggle with adulthood, with manhood, with responsibility, because too much was done for them. And when I would tell my mom, because I'm 7, 8 years older than them, when I would tell her, Mom, I think you're doing too much for them, she would tell me, I don't understand because I'm not a mother. And I'm certain that there's truth to that. But I was able to objectively see that you're doing too much for them, Ma. You didn't do that for me. I was shocked when I found out that before my brothers got married, they were roommates. They were renting a place together, and she was going over there and getting their laundry every week. I could not believe when I say my flabber was gasted, I didn't know she was still doing that because I was maybe 11 or 12 when she just stopped washing my clothes. There was no conversation. My hamper was overflowing. I was picking stuff out and washing it in buckets and in the tub and hanging it up to dry. And I'm like, when is my mom gonna wash my clothes? Like, what is going on? And I got tired of waiting for her and just went on ahead and washed them myself. And when she saw me doing it, she said, I knew you would figure it out. But they're grown and you going over there, you watching them. Why are you doing that? I had no idea she was doing that. So sorry to be long-winded. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. And I think everything you said was so spot on. And so, yeah, when I was saying that, we put the boys in like the partner spot, I was thinking more on the emotional side of things, the way that we like to love and dote on our man and do all of these nurturing things, which is our role as a woman. But when there's that void, when the father isn't there, then that structure that he gives to the family is missing. And so, like you were talking about, Lenitra, how fathers help, like they raise their boys and then are softer on their daughters. And then for the daughters, it's like when they don't have their daddy there being soft on them, all they have sometimes is that like harshness. And so then it's hard. And they grow up to be more in their masculine energy because they weren't able to be in their feminine energy because they didn't have their dad around. And so, yeah, I think that a true balance needs to be had. And one of the things, I watched an interview with, I believe it was Michelle Obama and Kelly Rowland and a few other people. I think it was when her book came out. But she was just talking about like the role of a parent and how it's like our job as parents is to prepare our children for life. And so I use that a lot with my kids. Well, I have a daughter and then my like nieces and nephews and stuff that I am around too. But I always ask them, I'm like, what's your job as a kid? It's to learn how to live life. And it's my job to teach you how to live life. And so I think similarly, like how we were talking about earlier, about how we kind of do that, the backwards when we're on our healing journey and we go backwards as to like, why are we doing this and things like that, we need to do the same thing when we think about the character traits and the routines that the kids need to have to do well in life. Right. And so like you were talking about age appropriate responsibility, it's like, okay, if we want them to have strong integrity, or we want them to be clean, or we want them to be whatever the case is, like, how do we go back and like, what's the very first thing that they can do to be able to start practicing that and to be able to have the muscle memory? That's one of the things I'm so grateful for, being raised by my mom. She was born in 54, and so she was real old school, and she was just very consistent, like very consistent. And so I just have the muscle memory of when things fall over, I immediately clean it up. Like, it's muscle memory because of how consistent she was about it. And what I've found with my generation is we're not as consistent with the kids. We are stressed and we get annoyed real quick, and I'll just clean it up. So they're used to us coming in and cleaning it up, and we're not as rigid with them with clean that up, clean that up, clean that up, clean that up. And now the kids are starting to get a bit older, and I'm noticing that they're not doing these things that they should routinely do. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that's on us though, because we get annoyed and we just do it for them. Or they don't have that as their muscle memory yet. And as soon as I started to realize that, now I'm real consistent with it. Like, it doesn't matter if they have left the room. It doesn't matter if I see somebody else about to do, I said, no, who did that? Okay, call them here and they need to do that. Because we see what's going on in the world, and it's because like kids aren't getting raised correctly. And so the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago, and the second best time is now. And so whenever it's like, I realize that I've messed up already, that's okay. I'm going to do it now, because there's a lot of things that my parents didn't know to teach, or they didn't know how to teach. And I figured it out at my age, and I'm still figuring things out. And so, yes, my daughter is 8 now, about to be 9. And so there's things that I'm figuring out. And sometimes I can get down about the fact that I didn't have these routines when she was younger, but I have them now. And even though it's hard, it's like, it's going to be a lot easier than her having to learn it at 25 or 30. And so that's been really encouraging. But I think just us having it in our mind, the characteristics that we want our kids to have, and then creating the kind of curriculum to allow them to practice that is going to be so top tier. I see a lot of videos online of kids doing like Montessori type things, and they have like knives and different like crinkle cutters and things like that. And I see these little just toddlers in the kitchen learning how to cut things and clean up after themselves. And I think that's so important. And so that they don't find some of these basic human tasks to be laborious. Like, it's just a part of life. Like, we don't think like, wiping ourselves after we use the bathroom is so laborious. Like, that's just what you do. And so if they're raised from toddlerhood to cook and to clean, it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to clean the kitchen. It's like, that's just what you do. And so I think that it's best when we're able to have our intact families, but when that doesn't happen for whatever the case may be, because sometimes it's not because we pick someone who wasn't the best. Sometimes life just happens. People pass away, or, jobs take them away. And so knowing what that role provides and being able to still find a way to provide that to the child if the, natural person who fills that role isn't there, I think is really important. So yeah, I love this conversation so much. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I have a question. Do you ladies think that the way we view raising our children is a product of the Western culture that we live in? For example, this guy, he wasn't even African. I think he was like East European, right? And he said, I guarantee a 5-year-old in my country can do more than a 15-year-old in your country. just based on how he's raised, what responsibilities he had. He said, I would trust that 5-year-old to do bigger things than I would trust a 15-year-old in your country. And they said it was a difference in raising and a difference in what we felt their capabilities were. And so I would ask like the question, if you've traveled, if you're from a different culture, what are the like the differences you see in how we raise our children?
Okay, my opinion and what I've seen. Um, yeah, I think absolutely that's good reasoning for the difference. I think that the Western culture over here in America, I'm talking like I'm still in Barbados, Lord Jesus. Over over here in America, it's like we don't a lot of times when teaching our youth, we feel like they can't take it all in, or they're not old enough to comprehend the level of knowledge that you're trying to give them, or you're going to overwhelm them and traumatize them, or you're gonna frustrate them, and they're not gonna. They've almost normalized us feeling bad for trying to pour extra into our kids, like, oh, if I have my 5-year-old out here tilling the ground so we can garden and plant some of our own food, that's too much for a 5-year-old. We've been Society is trying to normalize that they can't withstand it. They can't take on that much. But in all reality, when they're in a young age, that's when they can take the most as far as pouring into them. I went to school briefly for education, and they tell you from birth till 5 years old, a child can consume the knowledge capacity of a 35 to 55-year-old. And to elaborate a little more on that, that means that when the older you get, the more discernment you have, that you can take in knowledge and face the fact that you don't know everything based off of at 0 to 5-year-old, you're like, oh, they're so young. Oh, if I try to explain this, or if I try to broaden their vocabulary, they're not gonna catch on. And yeah, Western culture has set the bar very low for what we feel comfortable with, what we accept as a good load for a child that age. So absolutely, definitely, Alafia, definitely.
I'll go. Yeah, I completely agree that the expectations are low. And then likewise, we internalize it and we don't expect or think that we can do much for ourselves. One of the things, I saw a video of somebody from Spain who talked about how in the West, we're just so child-centered. Like everything revolves around the child and their happiness and everything that they need versus incorporating them into the community or the family setting. And so then there's this expectation from the child that everything is supposed to be about them and not how they can work and fit into the family structure. And which is a complete skew. And I think that we're seeing that a lot now that Gen Z has entered the job market and all the things, and they're growing up and just expecting everything to be accommodated towards them. Which, I mean, some of the things, it's a good thing that they're like standing up for, but then other things, it's like, nah, bro, like take your seat. Like it's not all about you. And so I think the same is likewise with the children. And children are more spiritual, right? And they might not be able to verbalize everything that they're feeling or picking up on, but they definitely feel it and they internalize it, right? So when we act like they can't do very much, they take that in and they feel that and they don't expect much from themselves, or they'll feel bad. And that's not our conscious intention, but that's like how they're receiving it. And there is truth to that. And so yeah, I completely agree with that. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I'll go. I I believe wholeheartedly that we are over correcting some things because with I'm I think I'm called a geriatric millennial. That's what they call me, or I'm a venial. Um, because I was born in '82, so it's like I remember a childhood of no internet. And when you go to somebody's house and they're not there, you write a note and leave it in the door. I know how to use a rotary phone if I see it, stuff like that. Um, and so I'm like right after Gen X. I'm at the very beginning of millennial. So I'm called a geriatric millennial. But when I think about just if you just go back one or two generations, they gave us a lot more responsibility to do. When I think about how old I was walking home from school with my key around my neck, and I knew that when I got home, I needed to call my mom on the phone at work and let her know that I'm home now and to fix myself a sandwich, take my stuff out, sit at the dining room table, complete my homework. Um, and then when my brothers came along, having the responsibility of making sure that when I leave from school to go by their school and walk my brothers home, um, and learning how to cook earlier and being left home alone and them telling us, don't open the door for nobody. If anybody calls, you tell them I'm in the shower or something like that. And we just did it. I remember my first year teaching, I was teaching fourth grade, and I had like most of my students would either take the bus or get picked up. But I had these two kids, they were brother and sister, who walked home. And when I realized that they were walking home, I was like, where are you going? And I was like, oh, we're walking home. You're walking home, and then I realized, wait, Lenitra, wait. Because when you were in the fourth grade, you walked home. You walked to school and you walked home, and nobody thought anything of it. Why now do you feel like this is just atrocious that these children are walking? How dare they let them walk home? And I just think that we're trying to overcorrect. There are some things that I do believe need to cease existing, as far as like how we were raised and how our parents were raised and how our grandparents were raised. I do think with each generation it should get better. But I just think that we are overcorrecting. And uh for what Mama Strong was saying about children, I also thought about how we are innately selfish. We do not have to be taught how to only think of ourselves and our immediate needs. We don't have to be taught how to lie. We don't have to be taught these things. Babies come here already. I'm hungry now. You need to change me now. They're going to cry and have a fit until somebody does something about it. And when they get a certain age, I feel like once they hit like a toddler, there are some things that they're able to understand, and that is when we need to start helping them to understand that they need to take other people into consideration. We have to be taught how to share. We have to be taught how to consider other people. Um, and if nobody is teaching you that, then you eventually just grow up into an adult who is entitled, and you just keep thinking that the world is supposed to revolve around you because nobody taught you after 1 or 2 years old that the world does not revolve around you. I think that's a lot of what we are seeing too, that they're not being taught. Then they grow up into adults that nobody want to be around. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. I'm gonna say something because it's like on the tip of my mind. But like us as black women, I think we take the model of raising our families from white folk. Like the idea the idea of the entitlement that's breeded in our children. Think about if you think about how let's think about the boys. If you think about how white men are, and their level of entitlement and how the world caters to them, it's like we're preparing them to be white men. And when they get out into the world and see that don't nobody see them like that, nobody's gonna treat them like that, it's like it's a shock. And some of them don't recover from the shock. They wind up in jail. They wind up with addiction. They wind up with broken families. They wind up not knowing how to be men. Men of our culture is like, yeah. And that's another reason why I'm like, how do you see it in different cultures? Because like in Benin, just from what my eyes can see and then what I've learned, like these boys, even the girls, are given responsibilities that, as Mama Sharon say, prepare them for their life. Whatever that life is, like if you were of a, let's say, lower class and, maybe you can't afford school. Those children are not home at daycare being taken care of. They're going to work with their parents. They're learning the skills that they need to learn in order to like overcome that hardship, like to keep the family going. They're contributing to the family. You see boys being apprentices for construction, like they're like learning the skill that they need so that whenever they do become of age, they're not sitting there saying, well, I don't have any skill. What do I do? How do I eat? Somebody help me. you know? And it's just, you see the girls, they're in the market, they're washing clothes, they're doing like they're cooking, they're running the households. To their degree, they're contributing to the family. And so they're learning how to live their lives, how to be prepared for the future. And so it's just a different world, a different culture. There's like that sense of entitlement that we're breeding doesn't exist in other cultures in the same way, you know? And they're really like, sometimes we'll see it like, how dare they make that child do that? you know, how dare she bring her to the market and make her sell stuff? Or how dare he work in construction at that age? But they don't see it that way because Miana would teach us, like in our traditions, we don't breed our children to like go to work. We we raise them we raise them to learn a specific skill that's um, that's something that's within their bloodline trait. Like if you come from a uh, family of carpenters, that's the skill that you're going to learn. Or if you come from a family of like, merchants, that's the skill that you're going to learn to bring that to the next level for your family. And so in learning that skill, you apprentice. You work for someone in order to gain that knowledge so that you can master it and do it yourself. And so in that, it makes you take like responsibilities at a younger age that we in the West think like, oh, you don't have the capability to do that yet. You don't have the capability to learn that yet. But you do. You do. I remember for my son, like I used to read to him before he knew how to talk, like a month old. 2 months, 3 months. I was reading to him when he was in the womb. I was like, you're gonna come out speaking. It's gonna be a quick transition. Like, and his vocabulary is at a higher level now because I refuse to teach him at the level society says is appropriate for him. Like Tanisha said, like I can pour into him as much as he can take. And the only way I know that he can't take it is if I do it. And so like, yeah, I just think we have to just personally go back to learning some of those traditional ways and like pulling out the goodness in that and seeing how it works for our family, because we're not raising white boys, we're not raising white men. They won't, it's not this, the society is not like that. They won't have somebody washing their clothes. Slavery is over. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? That was good conversation.
Go. Yeah, you said so many good things. I was just like, yes, 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 yes. When you had said they're being raised like white boys, it like finally clicked for me. I'm like, there's this saying that says, have the confidence of a mediocre white man. And then I think about all of the Black boys or Black men who want to be praised for doing basic things, just like basic things in relationships. And I'm like, that is that mediocrity right there. And then that also had me thinking about how a lot of the elders would talk about how segregation, when we were segregated, we did really well, and how desegregation was kind of like the beginning of our downfall. And when you were talking about like we're raising our families with this white model and having these expectations that is very like white culture centered, that just like put a lot of pieces together for me. And I think us having these expectations, or not even these expectations, these desires to have some of these things that they have within white society, and not thinking about the fact that it's not rooted in nature, that it's not sustainable. The reason why they have a lot of the things they have is because of the oppression of the world, honestly. Like, you shouldn't be able to do some of the things that they're able to do, because the reason why they're not doing it is because somebody else is. And it's disproportionate. So like being able to like zoom out and see that, I think is really helpful, and being able to teach that to our kids, because that's hard when you do go to school and you go over to your friend's house, and you see that they're able to have this and that or do this and that, and they're wondering why they can't have it. And if they process that incorrectly, then they'll think like, oh, they're not good enough, or they're not worthy enough, or it's not possible, when really it's like, no, that's unnatural. Like, you don't want that, actually. I think is really important, and something that I'm definitely going to be taking with me as I'm, helping to bring up kids. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation. It's just so eye-opening. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
I go. And I just would like to add that I think it's crazy that we picked up this white model, because that wasn't working for Becky and Todd. Like, we saw in the grocery store when their kids are telling them, go to hell, mommy, and shocked, because I am 43 and I still wouldn't say that to my mama. And you just said that at 8. Um, it sounds like it doesn't work. I always feel like, I'm like, well, white people got smoke for everybody but their own kids. It's like nobody can do, they ready to kill, hang from a tree, all kind of stuff. But when it comes to their own children, their kids can tell them where to go and what to do when they get there, and they just let it slide. And then we have just like, somewhere along the line, we picked this stuff up. And I'm like, that don't even make sense, because that wasn't working for them. And so when I see certain things, I had to correct my nephew yesterday. He's 15, about something, and I tried to make sure in the correction, I was like, now I understand that you're a child, so you're not gonna know unless you are told. So I'm taking this time to tell you now, because you need to know what this looks like. You're getting older, and if you continue to do this, then it's going to look like this to other people, because that's what it just looked like to me. And I'm your TT. I love you. Everybody ain't gonna love you like TT. So you need to know this now. But I'm just like, when did we, yeah, it got to be somewhere around integration when we started picking this stuff up. And yes, there are some things that I feel like it was good for us to let go of, as far as like beating our kids the same way we were being beat as slaves. That's a little harsh. But I do think it helps if they know that a whooping is always on the table. Now, I don't want to have to go there, but if I have to, it is an option. Um, I don't know. I Alafia. I'm like, that stuff don't work for them. How we think it's gonna work for us?
Lenitra, you hit a good point, and I love it. I love it. I love this conversation altogether. But oh, what was I about to say? You were saying the punishment, how we do not refrain from physical punishment if necessary. I think again, based off how where the differences is where the white families are raising their sons and daughters, it's the fact, I think a big part in that is that they overpour entitlement, and there is no consequence. There is no form of consequence accountability. While we are trying to refrain from the entitlement and pouring in the consequences, liability, you have to be accountable. And there it's like the accountability, it's in the entitlement, there's no balance. There's no equilibrium in that at all. So good point, and good point. Love you.
Yeah, all great points. Really, all great points. I think we have to work to, like I said, understand our traditions and understand, that in our traditions, as Mama Strong said, like things, how we raise our children have to be rooted in nature. And so I would ask the group, and maybe this is like a tough one, but like rooted in nature. For example, one easy, you don't work, you don't eat. There's no, manna dropping down from the sky, honey and bread. It's not happening. You don't work, you don't eat. And a lot of times we miss that point in coddling our children. But what other ways can we work to align our practice of how we raise our children with the rules of nature, aligning with nature? What are your thoughts?
I'll go. I think because for so long we've been disconnected from nature, um, there's like a relearning that has to be done about what nature's true principles are. Because Western society lives like opposed to nature's principles. That's why it's crumbling now. It's not sustainable. But we don't realize that most of the time. Like we don't realize it. Like even thinking of ourselves as animals is like a weird thought, an odd thought for most people. Like remembering that we're a part of nature, because like the way our language is, it's like we talk about it like we're outside of it, not a part of it. And so I think even there's like a relearning, or not even a relearning, like a learning for the first time of like what nature is, what its tenets and principles are, and then how we express that. I think it's really, really important. Alafia.
For me, I think one of go. For me, one of the first things that I think about when aligning with nature is the family structure. Like a lot of times, we don't necessarily understand or go with the family structure. There's so much in our current society that flips it upside down, meaning the woman acts like the man acts like the woman, the child acts like the husband, like there is not a good hierarchy within the family. And I think that's one of the principles of nature that we see. You see the mother, the feminine, the masculine, they come together to produce a product or a fruit. And Miano, she said it so well one time in one of our classes. She said like the masculine and the feminine, they come together, they produce a fruit, right? And that fruit is supposed to, sorry, no, they produce a seed. Yes, they produce a seed. And then that seed is produced for the purpose of bearing fruit, right? And so it's like the parents, if you take the model from nature, parents, they produce a child, and that child is their investment into society, into their bloodline to produce a fruit, right? And that fruit to be shared with all, like with the family, with with the environment. And a lot of times that thought process is thought about in a negative way. You're supposed to raise your child just to, I guess, I don't know, you're just supposed to raise a child, right? And not expect it to bear fruit, not expect it to give back to the family. And oh, Tanisha, you're here. You might die. Yeah, okay. And not expected to give back to the family. That's one way that I think that we're not raising our children to be in alignment with nature, right? We want them to do well. We want them to go out, but we don't expect them to give back. Right, we don't expect them to bear fruit that the bloodline can benefit from. What do you ladies think about that? A lot. Well, actually, sorry, I'll go. Actually, that was just one of my examples, right, of how we don't raise our children to go in alignment with nature. Um, that's just one example. Lafayette.
I go. I think that and maybe this is like our humanity, but I think that it's very easy to forget that nature is both loving and cruel at the same time. I'm not suggesting be cruel to your children, but there are consequences that could, like, the animals understand it, the insects understand it. It's just like somewhere along the line humans have stopped understanding it, or if not being taught to future generations about the very real consequences. I think somewhere along the line we have become afraid of if we hurt or traumatize or something like that. But if we are trying to teach the lesson of, if you don't work, you don't eat, then if this is the lesson that is being taught, if they don't figure something out, and then the consequence, like if there's something, I guess, that you set up or some type of challenge or something they were supposed to do, and that the end result was that they eat tonight, they're not gonna die if you actually stick to that. I'm not saying that do that every single night, or even maybe not even for that night. Maybe you just delay dinner for a little while and let the reality set in that, oh man, I really messed up, and then okay, you feed them. But I do think that the consequences of nature definitely need to be emphasized and taught more, which I've noticed um, that people of color all over the world, and I really don't like to use that term in mixing Black people with people of color, but I've noticed that when you look at like indigenous groups of people all over the world before colonization set in, whatever country it was normal for them to live in harmony with nature and in tandem with nature, and making sure to show gratitude and to do things in balance and to not be wasteful. Um, and that is just not the approach or the mindset of Western society, or the majority, or the culture of the majority of the West, to try to live in harmony. It's just about conquering and conquesting and having control over, and consequences be damned as far as who has to pay the consequences for this. Um, and we have started doing the same thing or adopting certain things and then passing it down to our children. And that is working against us. I think it's working against everybody, but it's definitely working against us as a community. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Wako. Yeah, Lenitra, I think you're on to a lot of things. Like, we have taken away a lot of the consequences for the actions of our children and then also other people. And so I think that's why we see so many unhealthy relationships and things like that. Like, it's just not in alignment with nature, right? Like, when you drop a plate and it shatters, like, those are the consequences of that action. Even if you accidentally knocked it off, at the end of the day, because of the other laws and principles that happened, it shattered. And I think sometimes because we put so much like moral grounding on all these things that we do, that affects like the way that we like interact, or like we have this fear of being alone, or like, I don't know, there's just all these other things that stand in the way that prevent us from being in alignment with nature sometimes, and even with our children, because you're right, like, unless we're not feeding them for like, more than 3 days or something, like I don't know the exact numbers for when people actually die from starvation. Like, we just have a hard time actually like following through with the consequences, and that does them a huge disservice when they get out into the world. And especially for us as Black women, and then our children, if they are, which typically they are Black presenting, will be held to those like standards. Like, I remember one time my brother was working at an amusement park, and I guess they send people to like test the employees kind of. And so there was someone, he worked at like one of those game booths, and like there was somebody who really wanted a stuffed animal, and like he kept pestering my brother about just buying the stuffed animal or whatever. And so I think eventually my brother like was like, fine, whatever. And then he ended up getting fired. That was like the first time anything had happened at the job or anything like that. And I can guarantee you a similar situation that happened with, some white teenager there, and they would have got a warning or something like that. Like, my brother had a pristine record, always came on time, everything like that. That one thing happened and they just let him go. And this was in like a white suburb. And so we are held to those consequences. We don't get the same leeway, and us giving our children the leeway is not helping them in life at all. And it's not helping ourselves either, honestly, when it's like we say we're going to do something and then we don't, for whatever the reason is. And I think one, being in situation where it's like dire is helpful for that, but I think the goal is always to be elevating and still holding those same standards for ourselves. And a part of it is like we were talking about earlier of just having the muscle memory, when like you are a certain way and you always act that way, then it doesn't matter what position you're put in, you hold to that standard. And so when we learn what nature's principles and rules are and we try to attain that no matter what, then I think that's the best. And then also being able to understand that sometimes you won't be able to make it to that standard, and that's still okay. You waking up in the morning is another opportunity for you to try again. It doesn't make you worthless. It doesn't mean that you're incapable. It doesn't mean all these things that sometimes we put when we aren't able to complete a task. Like a lot of times we find that like we're imbalanced in a lot of areas because one mess up does not completely throw out everything else we've done in life. And sometimes we react that way. I was watching some medical show and they were just talking about the not the symptoms. It's kind of like the word similar to symptoms, but PTSD and CPSD, which is like complex PTSD. And being Black in America, we off the rip have that, and we're not even aware of what that means and what that looks like. And because of that, there's a lot of times where we're having these reactions and we don't realize, because this is the way that we've always had to operate, this is the way our family operates, we don't realize that we're not in the right frame of mind. Like how in the meditation portion, we talk about, being in fight or flight mode versus being in your parasympathetic. And we live in fight or flight mode and we think that that's normal. And we're not even realizing that these reactions aren't normal. And so, yeah, as we're doing this healing work, it's so important for ourselves and our community, and being able to physically get into nature. Us as Black people in America, we don't spend a lot of time in nature in general. And so we're not able to just observe or even to reset the natural reset that we need to get into our parasympathetic system. It happens as soon as you are in nature for any amount of time. The longer, the better. But, literally the way that our eyes register and see the horizon line shifts as soon as we get into nature. And, the slave master knew that we have power being in nature. We're powerful people, and that's why they spent so much time keeping us from that. So I think us just being able to just physically get back into nature will be really, really healing for the whole community. Alafia, Alafia, Alafia.
Go. I totally agree. A lot of times it's with all the points, but especially the points where it's like we don't really realize that we're not living according to nature. It's like the PTSD example. We don't really realize that something is off. And so we have to start to get back to that. One of the points that made me think about is the point of entitlement. One of the rules of nature is that you have to give first before you receive. So give first before you receive. And a lot of times when we're raising our children, we do the opposite. We allow them to receive first, sometimes without giving or giving after the fact. Like, I'll give you this candy if you promise to do your homework, right? And it's like, Western world tells you that's I guess giving them motivation to now try to get candy to do their homework, but it doesn't work like that. Or I'll give you this snack just because you're cute, just because you're good, just because you're my kid. That hurts in the long run. And what I think it does is it's against nature. So when they grow up into the world, they kind of have this thought process of if I don't receive just because I'm me, then I'm not worthy. Something is wrong. I don't have value. you know? And that is a disservice to them, because actually you're supposed to be giving your energy, your time, your money, you're supposed to be giving in nature before you can take something out of it. And the more that you give, the more that you can take. And so I think even in that simple example of candy, reversing that, do your homework and you will get X, Y, and Z. Oh, you want a snack? Did you clean your room? Have you done something to contribute to the family at your capacity before you're able to receive the things that you want? It teaches them a good lesson. And then as they become older, I think as they become older, as they become business people, they're not giving themselves away for free. You know, they're not allowing somebody to take advantage of them. Like my son would go to school with these Pokemon cards, and the kids would be like, "Oh, can I have this one? That's a good one. Can I have this one?" And he would like give it to them. And I will always ask, what did you get for it? What did you get for that? You didn't get anything? And so I started making him like negotiate. Like, you have to negotiate. You have to get something. And so he would come back and say, "Oh, I got this." And the Pokemon cards, they have different like strengths. They number them like this strength versus this strength. And so I was like, "So you gave away an 80 and you got a 40. Does that make sense?" And he's like, "No." And I said, "Okay, so if you give something away, you have to get something of equal or greater value." And after a couple of times, he started to understand. Now he can't be taken advantage of. People can't take his cards. I have to be careful because he'll try to take advantage of someone else. He'll be like, "Oh, I got an 80 and I only gave him a 60." I was like, "Okay, you can't do that." But of equal or greater value, so that when he goes out into the world, he can manage himself in an appropriate way. He knows how to negotiate a value, and he knows that what I have is valuable and I want something of equal or greater value. And I think that's also teaching, like, there's no void, not creating a void. All existence is full. And so I think even though, going through the Mami Goddaughter, going through mentorship, going through these classes really help you understand what those principles in nature are. And I think we know more than we think we do if we think about the lessons that we learn and applying them, because they're all based in nature. And yeah, so that's one of my observations that I've seen, how like little ways how we can start to realign with the knowledge that we have. I feel.
I go. Something that came to mind as you were talking was, I hear a lot. I felt it too, especially like during my deep depression. There's this statement that gets said about, I didn't ask to be here, right? It's like when what sparked that thought was when how you have to give before you can receive. And it's like our parents give us life. They give us the physical life, but because we don't know our spiritual framework, we think that we didn't ask to be here. But when you know that you came specifically at this time, like our ancestors come back at specific times, and when an ancestor wants to come, there's nothing that's going to stop them from coming. I think that completely shifts how we would live our lives, and that's something that I'm still like really embodying and like feeling deep all through me, because sometimes it still feels that way of like life is hard and I'm tired and like, why am I here? But you know what it is, in the Matrix, when Neo goes and sees the Oracle, and she was like, I don't know exactly verbatim what the words that were said, but basically you already know the answer. You're trying to figure out, or forget. It was like he was asking her the question, and she's like, you already know the answer. You're trying to figure out how you got it, or something like that. I'm gonna find the meme. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? That scene? Okay. And I guess it's like that. Like if we teach our kids and even us having the understanding, like we came here for a reason, and us living our life is the application of that reason or the unfolding of that, I think will be really helpful and like lessen that idea of entitlement that a lot of kids will feel of like, well, you're the one who had me, so you have to take care of me, and you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to do that, and all of these things. And and to a degree, because even when I think about like babies, it's like they still do give. They give a cry to let us know that they're hungry. It's our responsibility to feed them. But what they give is the indication that they're ready to eat, And so it's like as they grow up, it changes. Like we don't realize our eye isn't trained to like see that principle at play in that way. And I think that once we train our eye that way, and then we also teach our children that way, that will help to set things more in balance, can be very, very helpful. And just knowing our spiritual framework, I think having the belief that everything's kind of random or nothing has reason, or even not fully understanding free will versus destiny, can be very detrimental. And so us returning to our principles is helpful to be able to just live life, because I think a lot of us now, because we have so many technological advances, we're starting to think of those like higher level type questions, and it can be very unnerving and ungrounding when you don't have like a basic rooting in like physical nature and its principles. As we're exploring these higher thoughts, it can completely like take some people out. There's a lot of people who have ended their life because they weren't able to have this understanding of their humanness and their physicalness. And so like finding that balance, I think, is really important. Alafia. Oh, and shout out to you for teaching nephew to be a good and equitable businessman and not take advantage, not to fall into capitalism's traps. Alafia.
That's funny. Go. Yeah, you gotta teach them early. They can learn it. But I love like the last things that you said. I feel like those are all topics for next Sunday or something. It's like free will versus destiny. That's that's a good topic. That's interesting. And then you mentioned like what you have, like being here, what your questions are for life, like how you're living your life or why you exist. And it just made me think about like, hmm, it just made me, oh, mothers are mothering. Um, So it made me think about like all the sacrifice that you need to, have in order to get into this life. Like you see the memes where it's like, oh, Earth is ghetto. Oh, I was comfortable in the spirit world. You see all those memes, and it's like your spirit gave up a lot to come and exist in this difficult, trying world, that it has to face danger, it has to face impurity, it has to face so much in order to fulfill that mission it signed up for. Like you gave a world away to live this, And so it's just really interesting. Okay. Well, I think, what do we have, about 5 minutes left? I think that that's pretty much, our time. We have to get ready for our next class. So it was just a great discussion. I'm thankful for all the ladies that came, even though if they couldn't stay, they contributed their energy. And I feel like this was like a discussion that more Black women need to have in our community. So I thank you, ladies, for coming. Thank you, Mama Sharon. Thank you, Anitra. And we will see you next Sunday. Alafia.